Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background, I am leading a project that looks at refugees integration in Southeast Europe. And here we're doing basically interviews with service providers in the regions in Bosnia, Croatia, Greece, and Romania. And since the war in Ukraine has started, we're also now including into our interview guide a subsection which more or less asks questions about some of the stuff I'm going to insist on over here. So just to get back to the line of argument I'm proposing here. So if we go back in February, just a few days after sort of Russia has invaded Ukraine, within the next few days, there's been a lot of attention and a lot, I would say, on social media, but also in some of the mainstream media on the neighboring countries such as Romania and Poland, and sort of their welcoming of the Ukrainian refugees. So the rhetoric, and again, this is very anecdotal, this is, sort of very preliminary work, but the rhetoric seemed to be that these have been welcomed, the Ukrainian refugees have been welcomed into Eastern Europe, unlike Syrians, Iraqi, Afghans, basically because they're white. So, and again, white has been defined in a very basic way through sort of racialist understandings of phenotypical traits. So in a way, through a very sort of, I would say, Anglo-American perspective on conceptualizing race. These interpretations that sort of surfaced on social media and other media have pointed out to race as a primary determinant in the differential treatment of refugees. However, this logic, I want to argue, ignores a series of other variables that makes the situation in the East more complex than just than what was emphasized. Okay, so now I'm going to quickly go through some of the things, and I'm not sure how long. I'm not sure I will be able to finish, but I will try. So. One thing that I think such logic in particular ignores is that there has always been a regional logic that grounds refugees movements. So if we look, for instance, this means, for instance, that most refugees tend to be absorbed first by the neighboring country. And I'm not saying that this is right or wrong. I'm just saying this is basically what's happening. So if we look at the Syrian war, most Syrian refugees are hosted in the neighboring countries of Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. If we look at Eritrea, we have half of Eritrean refugees in the neighboring Ethiopian and Sudan. The same, the Rohingya people are basically hosting most of them in Bangladesh. So that's one point. Then again, if we look at ethnic composition and regional labor market flows, in Poland has been for a while the primary EU destination country for Ukrainian migrants. So at the end of 2020, there were roughly 1.5 million Ukrainians on sort of, work permits and other kinds of arrangements in Poland for work. Again, they're about, in terms of ethnicity, Poland has around 160,000 Hungarians and around 150,000 Romanians living in Ukraine. And in fact, Romania also has a political party that has a seat in the national parliament, which is the Union of Ukrainians in Romania. So basically what I'm trying to point by this is that, there's already some sort of a shared commonality in terms of this neighboring country. There are also, other rationality as to why they might be more inclined to, let's say, accept Ukrainian refugees. So you already have people working in the region, you already have ethnic minorities, you have ethnic parties that sometimes have seats in the parliament, and etc. And there's also continuing movement. As in, for instance, Ukrainians regularly crossing regional borders for personal reasons, such as accessing medical care or visiting family. So I just put here a case of, there's been sort of a lot in the Romanian media, of this woman that, for instance, will cross into Romania in the city of Suceava, which is very close, less than half an hour to the Ukrainian border. She was coming for dialysis 3 times a week. So we already have situations in which, people had some sort of commonality in terms of how they were more or less living their lives. And another point of commonality, I would say, it also the fact that Eastern Europe shares a common Soviet history, and after the end of the Cold War, a sort of common anti-Russian sentiment. And I think there's a sense of shared solidarity based on a similar history of oppression, and also a shared memory of the Russian aggression that makes the pain of Ukrainians in a way more intelligible to other Eastern Europeans. So one example, if you look at these photos, this could be any building in the Eastern Bloc. I grew up in Romania in a building that looked more or less like this. So I think also, seeing this and having this feeling of familiarity in terms of, this could be where I grew up, this could be my grandmother's flat, or etc. I think this also makes this pain sort of more common. Another argument will be, as it relates to linguistic similarities. So, Ukrainian Polish
two
are
minutes
both
more, Raluca.
Okay, so Ukrainian Polish, they're both Slavic languages. People understand each other very, very easy, very, very easy. I'm just going to very quickly go through everything. Another point of commonality is orthodoxy. Okay, so when the Berlin Wall fell, Ukraine had about 40% of the population self-identify as Orthodox. Now they have close to 80%. So, again, you have Romania and Ukraine, they share sort of this Orthodox position. And I think also, and then I will probably stop, and I think also I would like to use this Arendtian formula of the right to have rights. And I think, because Ukraine is in a way with one foot inside the EU and one foot sort of outside it, but it has been on the path of European integration. It signed several agreements with EU. And I think this sort of makes the Ukrainian migrants, it transforms them into different categories of migrants. And they're compared to, third country nationals, such as those from Syria and Afghanistan, who don't even have, in a way, the right to have rights, because they're already on path of European integration. They already have some sort of, more access than, let's say, other people on the move. And again, I'm not coming from a moralistic perspective, so I'm not saying this is right or this is wrong. I'm just saying that attention needs to also be paid to the legal context and how the migration governance in the EU also creates different categories of migrants. I will stop here. Thank you.